Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Living in Fullness podcast, where you get your undiluted, authentic, entertaining, thought-provoking content. Today on our episode, we've got the gorgeous, the lovely, the beautiful Vanessa Mokwena.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming through. Mokwena is your husband's surname, right?
Yeah.
You are in for a treat. Welcome to the Living in Fullness podcast, where you will get relatable, authentic, entertaining, and thought-provoking content. I am your host, Naki. Here, we believe everyone has a story and every story has a purpose. It's when you own your story, your voice, and your journey that it's able to impact those around you. Our journeys and life experiences are not a coincidence. Join us on our journey to living their purpose on purpose by staying glued to learn more from real life experiences.
Hey, she's a wife, she's a mother to two beautiful children, she's an entrepreneur, she's a health and wellness coach, and she is a cancer survivor.
I was adopted. I'm joking.
Well, I mean, that wouldn't be bad.
Yeah.
All right, Vanessa. So I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And I couldn't wait for this. I think the one thing that I just want to know, because for me, I know that you come from the UK, right? Mm-hmm. And then you moved to South Africa in 1995.
Yeah.
So how was change for you? Because for me, I've always had to move countries. I followed my parents through all the way, and changing schools, changing houses, changing a lot of things. And I think I saw what God was doing, because my life now is a lot of change. It's a lot of impacting change. How have you had to adapt to this change, to meeting new people, to making new friends? How's that been for you?
So I think initially the move when we came in 95, 96, I was still quite young, and we actually moved to Cape Town when we first came. And I went to school in Cape Town for about 2 years, moved up to Joburg, went to a new school obviously, and I think it was just kind of, I think if you are a bit of, not a traveler, but if you are being moved around all the time, you do adapt quickly to make new friends and create different relationships. So yeah, I think also because I was about nine when we moved here, 8, 9, I think, not giving away my age, but yeah, so just kind of went with the flow, and yeah.
Wow.
You know.
Are you an introvert?
Introvert sometimes. I think my business, my work has to make me an extrovert. But I think in terms of different social settings, I've learned to become more extroverted to meet new people, and to kind of get out of my comfort zone, to meet people.
Yeah, I see. I think for me it depends, because I'm generally, if I tell my husband I'm an introvert, he's like, the way you talk in this house doesn't look like an introvert. But if anyone else is meeting me for the first time, will definitely be able to know that Naki is an introvert, at least for the first day. But then you spoke about your business, right? How did you get into entrepreneurship?
So when we moved to Joburg, I was actually living with my mom, and my mom was a school teacher in SA, and she didn't earn a lot of money. My dad eventually moved back he was living in America, and with my mom, she didn't earn a good salary. So what I decided to do was go into work as soon as I matriculated, to help out at home. I think at that point she was maybe earning, she's probably going to kill me, but I think back then she was earning about 1.5 a month. So I went in, a friend of mine had a job in the motor industry, and she kind of opened the door for me to get into the motor industry. So I started working in the motor industry for a good 13 years. However, with the motor industry, I was never in sales, by the way. But with that industry, it's very male dominated, and with my personal choices of being in an interracial relationship, that didn't really sit well in the industry I was with. Not to generalize the whole industry, but there was a lot of time that I was scrutinized, and I think the work environment was very toxic, especially when they knew I was dating out of my race. One of my jobs, actually, I got fired for it.
Oh.
So yeah, there was a lot of racism. There was a lot of just nastiness. and there was no growth. But in that toxic environment, I literally would come home. So I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I would literally come home and cry in my car before I would go home. It was just horrible. I'd have anxiety on Sundays about going into work on a Monday. I literally, and also in terms of the time, I've got 2 kids. I could never take them to school. I could never fetch them from school. If they were sick, I would hardly get any leave. So for the first time in my life, my husband actually said to me 5 years ago, with seeing how unhappy I was, he said to me, look, I can try and hold you down for the next 6 months for you to pursue a passion or career that you want to pursue. Which was the first time in my life that, that opportunities ever happened. So I said, okay. So I actually went into events, and I left my job. The last thing, actually, the last straw for me was in a room full of men, and I'd asked my manager something, and he turned around and said to me, get up off your fat ass and go do it. And that's when I quit. I went into events, and I really loved it, but I didn't really feel much passion for it. And at this point, I'd had a transition of, I was already on the products that I sell. So my husband and I, after we got married, we both put on a lot of weight. We just got really comfortable because life
Comes with
happens.
marriage, right?
Yeah. So like leading up to the marriage, to the wedding, I was in gym. I was, after we got married, I was like, bring on those donuts. I was like, but I put on a lot of weight, and we both did. So I think my husband got up to like 135 kgs. I got up to, I think, 96.
Yeah.
And we just, I think it was just more of a self-confidence thing. I stopped being social. I stopped taking photos. If it was photos, it was selfies. I was just really self-conscious all the time. So I actually got started on a Herbalife program and got really great results. I was just a customer. And my coach kept telling me about the business. Okay. And I was like, ain't no way that I want to sell shakes. I've never sold anything before in my life. My coach used to be a bodybuilder, so he looks like a coach, Yeah. I was like, I don't look like you. Who's going to buy, So for 6 months, he kept saying to me, you just come through to a meeting, just hear about, and I was like, nah. I was also I think being in corporate, I was always kind of like, what are my friends and family going to think if I start selling shakes? They must, But I went through to a meeting, I heard different stories, and I got really inspired, and I thought, you know what? If not everyone else, why not me? So I got started in the business. It's going to be 5 years in June, actually. And I've done that full time. And I found a passion and a purpose of helping people. Helping people in the same way that, before I started, when I was feeling so self-conscious of how I looked, how I felt, constantly just dressing to hide myself, and even when we take photos, just wanting to crop yourself out, and I just, I really was in a low place. So coming to a place where I can help people do the same and help people regain their confidence and their health back is really worth it for me. Would I have said ever 5 years ago, would I be a health coach? No, definitely not. But it has been very, very fulfilling, and being able to impact a lot of people's lives has been very fulfilling.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, because sometimes, what stops us from experiencing ourselves fully or going through our purpose that we were created to actually go through is the fact that we think a lot about what people think, and sometimes you don't realize that once you start, then things will start flowing, and then you earn your purpose and you earn your voice and you own your journey as well.
Yeah.
So it's the fact that you actually go to a place where you say, you know what, I've been here, I know how it feels, and I need somebody else to come out of it.
Yep.
And then I need to impact them. So, and I think you also mentioned about toxicity as well, and toxic environments. I was in a toxic environment at some point, and I think for you to come out of a toxic environment, you need to have a voice.
Yeah.
And you need to own it, because sometimes people stay there because it's what they're used to, and they feel they really need this job and I can't do anything about it. So what really pushed you to come out of that toxicity? Because it's quite difficult to come out of toxic environments.
It is, and even in terms of your mindset from a toxic environment can also stay ingrained in you for a very, very long time. I'm still trying to unlearn a lot of corporate teachings in terms of mindset. That's kind of, when you're in a toxic environment, especially in a workspace, you're always made to feel like you'll never find another job, or you aren't good enough, or you'll never get promoted, or or even in terms of a mind frame that you'll only get a certain amount of income for the rest of your life with a 5% increase every year. So all of those kind of things, for me to get out of it, I think it was very scary, because to be honest with you, I've always been very independent. And I've never ever wanted to depend on a man, ever. So even with my husband, when we were first dating, like sometimes when I wouldn't have money or whatever, he would literally, because I'd be too proud to ask, he would literally like leave money in my cupboard or like under my clothes,
because
or whatever.
he knows you wouldn't ask.
Yeah. So for me, the scariest thing to now be dependent on someone, which I still am trying to work through, to be honest. I still don't want to be fully dependent on anyone. But it sometimes you've got to take a leap of faith. Sometimes you've got to know it in your gut that you aren't supposed to be where you are. And I think a lot of the time you know it in your gut that you are worthy of more, that you should, there's more to life than what it is you're doing right now.
True.
So that for me was what it was, I guess.
Yeah. That's the one thing I always say about toxic environments. Toxic environments, you complain and then you adapt, then you adopt.
Yeah.
So whenever you see or identify toxic environments, I run.
Yeah.
Literally. So Vanessa, you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You're a mother. How do you do that? You're a wife. Being a wife is like a full-time job.
Being a wife is parenthood also. It is.
How do you do that?
It is a lot, to be honest. And I think, especially as women, I don't think, and it's not to take anything away from men, but I think it's not highlighted enough that you've got to work, you've got to look after the kids, you've got to come home, you've got to cook dinner, you've got to do all of these things and still make time for yourself, because as women, that's a big thing that we often lack. We often don't take care of ourselves anymore.
That's
especially
true.
After you get married or you have kids, you'll see a lot of women just tend to kind of let go.
And you just want to impress your spouse.
Yeah. But it's hectic. Is it manageable? Yes.
But for how long though?
I think it's something. I think it's something you kind of get into the groove of. It's the same thing with, when you're studying, when you're about to write exams, you've got so many different things to go through. You've got so many different things to cram, but eventually you're going to write that exam and eventually you're going to excel in it. Were you under pressure at that period of time? Yes. Was it worth it? Yes. So I think every season is a different, you kind of adapt differently. From even when the kids were small to now that they're a little bit more self-sufficient, before I would have to bath them, I would have to do everything else. Now that they can do those things, so it kind of every stage, every season adapts. And being an entrepreneur as well it can really suck sometimes, because you've gone from working, I always laugh, like I used to work 12 hours a day at my job. Now I work like all the time, but it's so worth it because I have freedom of time to, whereas I never used to get to take them to school. I never used to get to fetch them. I never used to get to see ballet recitals. I get to do that now. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. The freedom of time, I wouldn't trade for anything, to be honest.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, because I always say that it's important to be present in every season, right? Because sometimes we miss what we're supposed to learn or what's supposed to happen in that season, because we're busy complaining, we're busy, groaning and saying, I'm not supposed to be here, I'm not worth this,
Yeah.
And I think when we actually pay attention and get to see what exactly is happening, what's God doing in this season,
Yeah.
you start seeing where He's been through it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then also you went through quite a lot, because I know you also have your cancer story as well. How did you manage to cope with, you've got your family, you've got marriage, you're an entrepreneur as well, and then now you have cancer, you get the news that you've got cancer. First of all, how did you get to know that you had cancer?
Oh, so my cancer journey is a bit of a trip, to be honest. So I'd actually, in 2021, I got COVID. And I got pneumonia, and I got really, really sick, and I couldn't understand because, my husband is not as healthy as me, and he didn't get really sick at all. And my family members in the UK, everyone had got, and I'm thinking about genetics, I don't know how it all works, but I was thinking they all got it, but they didn't get as sick as me. So I was like, there's something wrong. There's no way that I'm getting this, because I'm pretty healthy. I work out, I eat well. And what had happened was, and that was in February, I'd also gone to, in that period as well of time, I'd gone to my gynae to remove my marina, because we actually wanted to try for a third child. So with that, with my pap smear as well, it had come back that I had HPV. So HPV is a cell that can also turn into cancer. However, my gynae at that point said to me, it would probably clear up after 6 months. Sometimes it's a stress-related thing. There's no symptoms or anything else. But, and he didn't really make it as if this could be a very bad thing. So I didn't think anything of it. I went back to him after 6 months. He said that it was still there. We would probably have to remove part of my cervix, but it's not a big procedure or anything. We can get it scheduled. I said fine. Anyway, got the COVID, got really, really sick, and then all the lockdowns kept happening. And then I caught COVID again for a second time, I think 4 months later. And I also wasn't recovering. So I was having to take naps in the afternoons. I was really just sick, and I was like, let me go to my GP to do a test, to just see what's going on. And I thought, let me look at this in a holistic approach, that let me go see a doctor, let me go see a therapist in case I'm loopy, let me go see someone spiritual, because I felt there was something not right with me. So I went to the GP, we did a whole bunch of tests, and everything came up fine. So he said to me it was probably long COVID. I went to a therapist because I was starting to have a lot of anxiety and panic attacks and stuff. And then I went to a spiritual person, and she kept saying to me, you need to go see the doctor. There's something not right with you. And she kept pointing to my stomach. So I was like, I've just been to a GP. They've said nothing's wrong. And then she said to me again, no, your womb, you need to go see a doctor. So I was like, okay. So then I'd called, or actually the gynae's room that actually called me. And in the space of time of maybe about 4 or 5 months of me catching COVID, all the lockdowns, everything else, my gynae had actually retired. So it was his replacement. They kept phoning me to say, I've seen your file, you need to come in ASAP. And I'm just thinking it's his receptionist, because I'm like, no one's told me he's retired or anything else. Anyway, I go in, and she says this procedure of the cervix they can do in the rooms. So I go in, and she gets me prepared, and she's like, oh, this is really bad. So I'm like, what do you mean it's really bad? So she was like, no, we're gonna have to take a biopsy.
Sure.
So I'm like, biopsy means cancer. I'm like, why the heck would she be talking
Yeah,
about
a lot is
cancer?
going through
Yeah,
your head
like,
at
you
that
know,
moment.
and everyone that's passed in my family has been from cancer. Literally, like, and it's you know, it's been hectic. So I'm like, this woman, you know, it's the first time I meet you, and you're telling me you're going to take a biopsy. Anyway, the procedure with her was awful. She actually, I'm not going to name the hospital or anything else. She actually like butchered me with no local, nothing. She took 4 big chunks of my cervix. It was very painful, and she took a bad biopsy, so it came back negative.
Oh, after all that.
After all that, and still something in me was like, I need to go see someone else. Even though it's come back negative, and now I had to wait a week for these results. So you can imagine, she's already telling me you're going to have a hysterectomy. It's going to be bad. I know the results are going to come back positive, and all of that kind of like took me back. So anyway, went to another doctor, and he said to me from the onset, he was like, I'm going to refer you straight to an oncologist because I think that's what we're going to have to. He didn't even have a look at me. We just sat down. He saw my file. Went to my oncologist. She was amazing. She took a biopsy. She was not anywhere as horrible as the last one.
Now I want to know that hospital.
Yeah. So it's a private hospital somewhere close to where I stay. So anyway, went and got the other biopsy. She called me in, and the funny thing is, I was with some of our team, and we were doing a boot camp when I got the call, and I still had to get up and speak to about 50 people, and I knew like, okay, I'm gonna get this news kind of thing. So I got the news, and I think I did have a moment of calm because I was like, so many people in my life have passed from cancer, but I actually don't know that much about it. I don't know that there's different stages. I don't know what a stage means. What does stage 1 mean? What does stage 1B?
So you're not really informed as well.
But I had an incredible team that helped me through my cancer journey with the doctors and everything else. So my first step was to have a radical hysterectomy. So what? And cancer doesn't give you time. It doesn't grant you time of making decisions or getting different opinions because it's like life or death. You don't have time to say, okay, maybe let's try this way. So with the radical hysterectomy, I then went to different fertility clinics as well to see if I could save some of my eggs.
Or like to freeze your embryos.
Because remember, I'd wanted a third child. And then there wasn't that much time. So I had this major surgery scheduled. Radical hysterectomy is not like a normal hysterectomy. Basically what they do is they remove your cervix, uterus, your fallopian tubes. They left the ovaries in just so that I wouldn't go through menopause. But they literally scoop out everything around it, surrounding the tissue, the lymph nodes, everything else. So I couldn't walk for about 3 weeks. It was probably the most painful anything that I've ever had to deal with. And it was also a little bit of a morning, like before I went into the surgery, I kind of broke down because this is now taking my womanhood, you know. Your womb, everything else is kind of, you know, in my mind was, you know, this, and I also had to mourn the fact I'll never carry a child again. I never feel, so, you know, I've been blessed and lucky enough to have two, and go through that process, and my heart goes out to those who've gone through this, who have never got the chance to have children. So I think it was all of that. And then anyway, when I recovered from the surgery, I then started chemo and radiation, which was also very, it was horrible. You know, a lot of people, I think what we see on movies and stuff is what we expect when it comes to that kind of thing, and that's what I did. You know, when they said to me, I'm going to have to do chemo and radiation, I was like, am I going to lose my hair?
Yeah.
What's going to happen? But there's different chemos, which I didn't know, and I've learned so much. There's different chemos. So my chemo didn't make me lose my hair, but I have hearing loss, which doesn't kind of go away. It just gets worse with time. So there's so many different aspects of the chemotherapy and everything else. The chemotherapy and the radiation put me into early menopause. With the chemo, they gave me steroids, so I put on like 15 kgs. The menopause made my skin break out really badly. And that was the other signs that I did have that something wasn't right. In the time of COVID, I obviously had cancer at that point because I kept breaking out around my jawline and stuff, but I thought it was the masks.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was.
I was like, what, you know, it must be the masks because of that. But I suspect even the first time when I'd gone to the gynae first time, I think I already had cancer, but he didn't check for my markers, etc. But anyway, so I put on a lot of weight through the chemo and radiation. My body changed a lot. You know, I've got a big nasty scar now from hip to hip from the surgery. And yeah, just a lot of body changes, you know, when you go through menopause, a lot of things are different, you know. So yeah, it's been a bit of a journey.
But I can imagine how did it impact your self-esteem as well? Because, you know, normally when we go through a lot in life, especially the fact that you didn't have enough time to process what's going on, you just had to make decisions. And you know how they always say that hardships end up testing all areas of your life, your marriage, your relationships, your career as well. How did you then manage to stay floating in all this? And did you at some point probably start processing it after everything was done, and now it impacts your post-treatment journey as well?
So I would definitely say in terms of my self-esteem, it did take a big knock. It took a big knock because I'm normally quite active and healthy, and you know, to go from that to from going to gym and everything else and working on myself to now kind of regressing to where I was previously, and also just be so self-aware of my skin, of how I looked, of how I felt. It took a long, but my main focus was getting back, to not fall into a dark area of pity for myself. I just wanted to get myself back. And I also know in hindsight that the old me will never be here, but a better version of me will be. So it's about working on myself every single day. And I think even throughout the process, you know, a lot of things kept me grounded. I would, even when I do radiation sessions every day in the machine, I would listen to worship. Through my chemo, I would listen to worship. Although sometimes some of the worship is a little bit triggering now because it's like
you get emotional.
Yeah, because that's what I went through, and you know, a lot of prayer, and you know, I really do sympathize with people that are going through chemo and radiation. It's something that I could have never have understood before. It's kind of like chemo is like your soul leaving your body, if I could explain it in any form. And it's really, really difficult. And I think it does affect your relationships, and I know it has affected our marriage. And I think I'm also a very big person, a firm believer of therapy. I think mental health is so key and important for us not to shy away from therapy. And I think therapy is a really, really good thing. So therapy helped me throughout my journey. And it still continues to help me. Because you can't just take things on by yourself, you know.
You need others to carry you through it.
Yeah. And to also help, you know, to know that other people have gone through the same thing as you. And, you know, there's always going to be light. And I think, you know, for me, I think a lot of praise, a lot of worship, a lot of prayer helps me a lot, as well as therapy.
That's beautiful. And you're quite strong. And I'm just wondering, you know, normally when we're going through the hard times, right, when we're going through phases of loss in our lives, we tend to start seeing people drifting away. And I don't know if they're drifting in our minds. I find people doing that a lot, like where you're in a state of, this is when I actually need people, and people tend to not be there anymore. I don't know if anyone else has gone through that. I feel that's what happens in most cases. When you're happy, when you're making it, there are people to spend money with you, you know, to go and have fun with you. But when you're actually going through the most and you are not able to give yourself, now you need people to give themselves to you. It's, no one is there to be seen. And I don't know, how did you lose any people or friendships during that process?
So I didn't lose any friendships. I think the best way to describe it is that everyone has their own traumas from childhood. And I really love to study like people's behaviors, people's patterns, why people behave the way they do. So I also could understand that, for example, like for me, cancer was a trigger for me before because of all the people I'd lost. So when it comes to cancer, you get two kinds of people, which from my own personal experience, you get people that have been through a trauma with cancer that pull back because your story is now going to remind them of what they've been through. Or you're going to have a person who's also been through that, but that wants to help.
Yes.
So neither person is wrong or right. It's just their response to it. There's no place for me to judge anyone on how they respond to what I'm going through and how they feel that they can be with me the best. Is it selfish of some people to say that they would rather not be in a space where they're going to be reminded of something that's bad that's happened to them through cancer? I don't think it's that selfish, to be honest, because I was one of those people, you know. So, you know, I had old friends reach out to me. I had friends who I thought would have been there more so, but I also understand that you also need to trust people for who they are and trust them to be themselves. So, you know, sometimes we look for really close, in-depth friendships in people that we don't have in-depth friendships with.
That's true.
You know, so I think it's also to just accept people for who they are and know who the in-depth ones are and who the good times ones are, or who the chill times ones are. So I didn't lose anyone, to be honest. I did have a whole squad of, and I think I'm really, really blessed that I have a really good friendships. I have good people around me. And I'm very specific about energy, about who I let in,
who you let in,
and who I don't, you know. But I'm very blessed with my social circles, to be honest.
And some friendships are for a season as well, because if you've noticed, sometimes you meet people in a particular season just because you're going through something, and as soon as that season is over, they're gone. You know, so I believe in, you know, being there for each other in that moment. But if we're not meant to be friends forever, that's okay as well. You're not a bad person, I'm not a bad person. It just didn't work. It worked when it needed to, you know. But then what are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for life. I think there's certain things that we really take for granted, like sight, like smell, you know. breathing.
That's true.
That we have, you know, even in terms of sight, the green and the leaves, you know, the weather today, it's raining. How many times do we just not acknowledge the small things in life? Because we're all such and this was me. It kind of taught me to kind of take a step back and acknowledge about life, and be kind to people. Life is too short to be stuck on remedial things or mundane things of, oh, this one said that, or this one did this. Certain things you can just see are just, it's really worth my time. So life, I want to explore more. I want to do more. I want to have more memorable moments than just me making a bag all the time. Because before this journey, that was my mindset, was I need to be successful, I need to make money. Now, in terms of what the crushing and the pressing of I've gone through, is now for me to say, how many people can I impact and how many lives can I change? Everything has purpose, and every season has purpose. So I need to also figure out who I can inspire and help with what I've gone through. And just not always just solely be focused on career, because there's so much more to life than making money. Because when you die, the money, you know, it's either going to benefit your generations, fantastic, but you know, how do you want to be remembered? That's the thing. Yeah.
And I always say that there are things that make us happy and there are things that give us peace, right? And those are two different things. So happiness is quite, it's looking at how am I feeling right now. It's looking at, have I attained all the things that I wanted to attain, the career as well. And then peace is, am I feeling, you know, it's more long term, you know, it's more permanent. And when you feel at peace, then you'll definitely be happy in your purpose. How would you define purpose for you?
I think purpose for me is, I think everyone has purpose, and I think your purpose will always continuously change. I think purpose is every single day, to be honest. For me personally, it's about, I know God wouldn't have put me through any higher being would have put me through anything that I can't handle, and also what's in His path for me. So sometimes you'll always go, you'll always go through like a bad breakup or something, or something will happen, and then only months later will you reflect back and say, oh, that's why it happened.
That's why it happened.
So connecting the dots, this is what's led up to this and everything else. So I think life is a continuous journey of finding your purpose, and sometimes it doesn't have to be as black and white as what we always expect our purpose to be. And sometimes some people can actually feel a little bit low and depressed if they don't feel that they know what their specific purpose is. But I think purpose is every single day. Purpose could just be smiling at someone and making their day, and you don't even know that stranger, but that's been your purpose of that day. So I think purpose can be so many different things.
That's true.
Yeah.
And we each have a purpose.
Yeah.
And I always say that if the fact that life has shifted or circumstances have shifted you from where you're at now doesn't mean God has shifted. God is still within. You need to be present. And when you are present, you see Him working. Thank you so much, Vanessa. It's been beautiful having a conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for watching. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below and let us know who you'd like to see next. See you next time.